Unlike the first week, she stopped helping with anything. She would order me around and threaten to hit me if I disobeyed. I was stressing my body so much. The doctor had warned me against doing anything stressful until after 3 months. We'd wanted to bring in a nanny, but changed our minds after my mother-in-law offered to live with us and take care of the baby. Whenever Greg was home, her attitude changed. She would pretend to care about us and even do the chores. Greg thought I was in good hands. One day, my mother-in-law brought her friends home and made me cook for all of them. It was so tiring because I also had to take care of my son who couldn't stop crying. I didn't even have any time to eat until they were all gone. Growing up, I'd always dreamed about having a happy home. I saw how cool my mom was with my elder brother's girlfriends, and I fantasized about my future boyfriend's mom being like that to me. I would also imagine matching outfits with my future mother-in-law. Well, in my last year in college, I met Greg. He graduated college 2 years before and was already working and doing well financially. I met him at a restaurant where I went to spoil myself after passing my exams. We were both immediately attracted to each other and found ourselves eating together and discussing. Afterward, we exchanged contacts, and he also drove me back home. As time passed, we got to know each other better, and I discovered that he was 3 years older than me. I mean, I didn't mind. I liked it when men were older because I thought it meant more maturity. He also didn't seem to mind that he was older. I concluded that it was his preference. We got closer and feelings grew. When we finally confessed to each other, 3 months had already passed. I was so excited when Greg told me about his feelings, but he seemed to be even more excited when I told him it was mutual. Greg didn't want me to stress myself with searching for a job, so he used his connections to get me a decent job at a great company. I was so happy and satisfied with how things were moving. One day, when I'd gone over to Greg's to spend the weekend, I gathered courage and asked if he had a mom. He always spoke about his dad and younger sister, but not his mom. Within myself, I'd concluded that she was dead. Shockingly, he responded that he had a mom but wasn't comfortable talking about her. I didn't think much about it until after he engaged me a year later. We were engaged, so I only thought it was right to meet his family. He'd already met mine, but he was always coming up with different excuses whenever I asked to meet his family.
You don't have to be close to them. I'm gonna invite them to the wedding, and you can just meet them there.
I thought that was plain stupid and absurd. I refused and threatened to call off the engagement if he refused to take me to his family. When he saw how serious I was, he agreed and we scheduled a day for it. Well, after meeting them, I understood Greg's point. When we got to the house, I met his father and sister Jane. They were down to earth and very hospitable. His sister showed me around their big house and also made lunch for me. I waited for his mom, but she wasn't anywhere, so I asked.
Oh, she went out for a walk. She should be back anytime soon.
Just as he was talking, I heard the front door open and a petite woman walked in. I was surprised to see how young she was. It was totally unexpected because Greg's dad was over 60. The woman looked like she was in her 30s. When she saw me, she had a confused look on her face. She faced Greg's father and asked him why he didn't call to tell her they had a visitor. I noticed her voice wasn't friendly, but I brushed it off.
Dad didn't know about it, so don't blame him. Her name's Vanessa, my fiancée.
She had a look of shock on her face, and I couldn't tell if it was good or bad. She suddenly faced me, and I could see that she was now wearing a frown.
You brought this thing home to introduce to us? Greg, I've told you countless times not to fall in love with an ugly lady. You'll end up like that mother of yours who married this ugly man and had you both. Are you crazy?
Firstly, ugly? Pfft, never. I'm very much aware of how beautiful I am, and even then, I knew I was gorgeous. I wondered why Greg's mother suddenly called me ugly. Also, I was confused about her choice of words. Was she not Greg's biological mother? I turned to Greg and saw that he was struggling to hold his anger. I immediately knew that there was no peace in the house.
Don't you dare speak about her or Greg's fiancé like that. Vanessa is beautiful. What? Are you feeling insecure again? Are you scared that someone in the family is more beautiful than you?
The woman was stunning, honestly. So, I understood Greg's father's perspective. I'd heard stories about mothers-in-law being jealous of their son's wife. It was weird to experience it happening to me.
Oh, are you going to start a fight with me in front of the stranger?
Can you stop it, Mom?
Well, I was feeling different emotions. I couldn't afford to see the family fighting over something related to me. I don't know what's going on, but I'm certain about one thing. I love Greg, and he loves me too. Ma'am, I sincerely like you and have wanted to meet you for a long time. Please, can you have a sit and let's not get too worked up?
How dare you? Who gave you the guts to speak in my house? How dare you try to make me the bad person in this?
Well, shocking was an understatement. I was feeling everything. In what way had I tried to make her a bad person? Before I could speak, Greg's sister spoke. She told her mother that the woman was being unfair to me, and that led to an outburst from Greg's mother. She grabbed his sister's hair and began fighting with her. Greg and I were quick to step in. Although I got my hair pulled and a few buttons of my shirt removed, I was able to separate the ladies. Greg's sister apologized to me after their mother stormed off to her room. His father also apologized. After changing into the shirt Greg's sister gave me, Greg and I left the house. On our way to my place, he kept apologizing to me. I told him I wasn't angry, but he didn't stop apologizing. When we got to my house, I asked about the woman's statement, and he revealed to me that the woman wasn't his real mother. Apparently, she used to be one of his mom's workers and had seduced Greg's dad a few years after his mom died. They ended up getting married, and she became his stepmother. I got to know that she was openly having affairs with different men, but his dad couldn't do anything about it because she threatened to take half his property if he ever tried to divorce her. I felt so bad for Greg and his family, but I couldn't do anything about it. Well, we got married and his stepmom was in attendance. Luckily, she didn't cause any trouble. Time passed, and I got pregnant. That was nearly 2 years after our wedding. All that time, Greg's stepmom never visited us. You can imagine my surprise when she suddenly showed up at the door a week after I gave birth. She was in tears, apologizing to us for her behaviors toward us. She swore to have turned a new leaf. Greg couldn't believe his eyes and ears. Well, eventually, after she apologized to everyone, she was forgiven. She proposed to move in with us to take care of the baby, and I couldn't be happier. I was finally getting the warmth of my dream mother-in-law. During the first week, she was good to me and the baby. Well, until Greg returned to work, then I realized that it was all a facade. She was still her evil self. Nope. My mother-in-law would sit and watch me do all the chores while still attending to my baby. Unlike the first week, she stopped helping with anything. She would order me around and threaten to hit me if I disobeyed. I was stressing my body so much. The doctor had warned me against doing anything stressful until after 3 months. We'd wanted to bring in a nanny, but changed our minds after my mother-in-law offered to live with us and take care of the baby. Whenever Greg was home, her attitude changed. She would pretend to care about us and even do the chores. Greg thought I was in good hands. One day, my mother-in-law brought her friends home and made me cook for all of them. It was so tiring because I also had to take care of my son who couldn't stop crying. I didn't even have any time to eat until they were all gone. Just when I sat down to eat, my mother-in-law called me to clean up after her friends. She also made me clean the whole house. By the time I was done, night had fallen. Before I was able to eat, it was already only a few minutes before midnight, and that was going to be my first food for the day. After eating, I drifted off to sleep immediately. The next morning, I was woken up by the icy water my mother-in-law poured on me. I burst into tears after receiving a slap from her for no reason. After only a week of my mother-in-law staying with us, I fainted and had to be rushed to the hospital by Greg. There, the doctor revealed that I'd been put under severe stress and had a minor internal injury. Greg was confused because he thought my mother-in-law helped me around the house. An operation was quickly scheduled, and luckily, it was successful. My baby was left in the care of my mother-in-law. When I demanded to see him after the surgery, Greg called his stepmom, but she didn't answer her calls. After several tries with no response, I began to panic. I'd wanted to cover up her crimes, but I couldn't. I told Greg everything and let him know that his stepmom was the reason I was lying on the hospital bed. He was livid. He quickly called his dad and sister and told them everything. They immediately rushed to the hospital. His sister stayed with me while Greg and his dad went home to find my mother-in-law. I was in tears because I was scared for my baby. They reached home and found the house empty. In fear, Greg quickly contacted the police and reported a kidnap. The police swung into action. Greg and my father-in-law went to all the places they suspected her to be, all to no avail. Then, Greg's father got a call from one of his friends who told them that my mother-in-law was escaping with my baby. She told them about how she said something about flying to Mexico. Greg and his father told the police and rushed to the airport ahead of them. Fortunately, they found her and my baby at the airport. When she spotted the police approaching her, she dropped my baby and started running, but she was teased, and she fell down, and she was immediately arrested. Apparently, she'd planned it for a long time. At first, she hated me because I was truly prettier than her. Also, she couldn't have any children because her womb was destroyed, and she was desperate to have a child. She knew I would be hospitalized at some point if she kept stressing me. I was so happy when I held my son again. My mother-in-law's friends visited me at the hospital and apologized for being quiet the whole time. They felt ashamed and said they regretted not telling me earlier. Well, I thanked them for at least not being quiet until it was too late. As for my mother-in-law, her husband immediately divorced her. She couldn't get his properties because of her actions. After the divorce, she was charged to court where she got years imprisonment for kidnapping of a child, emotional and physical assault on me. After a year in jail, information reached us that she had a fight with one of the inmates who she was jealous of for being beautiful. Well, the inmate was very strong, and my mother-in-law ended up getting blinded, as well as a permanently dislocated ankle that caused her to limp forever. When my father-in-law heard it, all he said was, "That serves her right."